Perfect. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Like Chad mentioned, I am a middle school teacher, and I've been using Quizlet for a while now. And Quizlet Live, of course, is everyone's favorite. But here are a couple other features that you can use. So here's the agenda just so we get started. You can see. So we're going to go over just organization on Quizlet. I've found this to be very useful in my own classroom so that I can find things easily. There are so many educational apps out there that sometimes you don't know which one to use, if you want to use Kahoot or if you want to use Quizlet, and what's the best one to use. So sometimes if you have everything organized, that's very helpful. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to integrate Quizlet into Google Sites, how to use Remind with parents for student and parent communication, creating manipulatives, which was, I think, mentioned in one of the earlier sessions, but we'll go over that one more time if you didn't get to see that session. How to use Google Forms to create a Quizlet deck or set, and then how to use a diagram feature in a different way. So we'll go ahead and get started. So in terms of the sets, if you create folders, this really helps you during the school year. So I normally revamp them in the summer so that I know where everything's going to be during the school year. So once I meet with my department and I know what stories we're going to read in our English class and what key vocabulary we're going to cover, then I start to create my sets and put them in specific folders. So it allows you to either share the sets individually or share the entire folder, which is really helpful like after a final exam for a unit, because then you don't have to share all the sets again. You just share everything that's in the folder. You can what my Quizlet account looks like. So this is my Quizlet account here. And I have folders for every unit for each grade that I teach. So it looks like this. And inside each folder, I have the sets for each story that we read in that unit, but also all of these three sets merged in. Let me see if I can minimize this. If I click on these three dots, I can edit my folder, but if I click share, then I can share that entire folder to Google Classroom, or just copy the link, especially if I'm collaborating with colleagues, and I can share the folder if I created a folder for one unit and then a different colleague creates a folder for a different unit. So that's just the organization piece that's really helpful for me. And that way I already have my sets done before the school year starts, and I'm not trying to make these sets while I go during the school year. So it's just, in terms of time management during the school year and just being better prepared, that's really helpful. Another thing that really helps, because when I share the sets in Google Classroom, sometimes my kids would have to like scroll through the stream, or if I share them in Google Classroom, then oftentimes my students don't know where to find them. But if I pin just one site where all my sets are there together, or if I send them to Quizlet, sometimes they just don't know where to find things if I don't give a specific link. So this is one other idea that I came up with, and it was to make a page on a Google site for each unit and then embed the decks on that page in the Google site so that all your decks are in a central location per unit. So let me show you what that could look like. So if you use Google Sites in your district, Google Sites look something like this. So I created a page for a unit, and then here I can embed the decks. Once you embed the deck, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, then you can either decide if you're going to embed the flashcards or the matching. And even once it's embedded, for example, like on this page here, you see that this is the flashcards. But if they have this little pull down menu here where they can switch it to match, learn, test, or flashcards or spell. And that's embedded within the Google site itself. So in order to do that, it's actually very easy. So if you go back to Quizlet And let's say I choose this right here. This is like all of the vocabulary for Unit 1. Then I would go to the 3 little dots here, and then I would put embed to just copy the embed code or the HTML code. Now I can decide what I want to embed. I normally go with the flashcards, but if you want to embed the match game, that's fine too. And then I just click copy, and I go back to the Google site. And since this is for Unit 1, then I would just I would insert the code here. So I would go to insert and then embed, and I would click on embed code, and then I would paste it, and then press next. And it does give me a preview here, what it will look like. Then I click insert, and then the game will be directly on your Google site. So they can play it here for that unit so that everything will be together for your unit. So it'll look something like this. So you have your game here. And then you have your flashcards down here. So you can embed more than one item, or you can just leave one and then have them switch back and forth to different feature of that deck or that set. So that's kind of Quizlet and Google Sites and how that can work together. So I just thought that was like a good way for you to keep everything centralized, especially if you have little kids that might get lost on the Quizlet website. So you can kind of put everything on one page where there's no distractions. All right, the next feature I really, really like is Remind. And I use Remind religiously with my students, especially because I have a lot of Spanish speakers, Spanish speaking parents, and I teach middle school. So I have 150 students. So it's not like an elementary classroom where I can make as many phone calls in a day as I would like to remind parents about an upcoming exam or a quiz. So this just allows me to send out reminders. So it's a text message application, and it's linked to Quizlet already. So it's super helpful. And you can send the text messages to the parents if they signed up, or the students if they're signed up as well. And you can let them know about upcoming quizzes and exams. And they can even study these sets with their own students because the link is directly on their text messages. And you can also forward like screenshots of like top scores on the match game or whatever you're having the students do. So let me show you how you do that. And let me know if I'm going too fast. I can slow down. Okay, so if I'm back on my Quizlet account, then I can click on a folder again. So let's say I'm done with the entire unit and we're about to have a unit exam. Then I can click share, and I can click share on Remind. So click share on Remind. And if you already have a Remind account, Remind is completely free. There you create your classes as well. And it directly takes me to Remind to the text message. So then here I select a class. And then I can say, hey, everyone, exam tomorrow. And then I have the link there, and it puts the link. If I want it in Spanish, then I can just highlight and put translate. And then there's all these languages. You can check the accuracy of the language if you know the language. If not, it's usually pretty close. So this one is actually really, really well translated. And then I can press send. And so now the parents know that there's a test. They know the link to the Quizlet set deck, and they can study with their kids. Normally parents really, really thank me for this because the kids are just like, how do you know I have a test? How do I not have to study? Normally when they ask me if they have homework, they'll say no. So they really love that I send these things out with a resource that they can use to actually like see them study or even study with them if they can help their students do that. So that's really handy. So if you have a folder, it's really easy for a unit exam because all your sets are inside this folder. So you can send the entire folder at once with all the sets there. Or if you just have a quiz for like a single set, then you can also send a single set. So if I click here, right, this is just for this one short story, and I click share, it's the same thing. So I just put share on remind and it will do the same process again. So that's another way that you can use Quizlet as well. So that's one of my favorite features about Quizlet and Remind working together to do that. So let's see how we're doing here. Okay. So creating manipulatives. This is another thing that I've been playing with as well. You can print sets off Quizlet as well. And this is just great for like days that maybe you don't want to use tech or that you want to use something more hands-on. So you can print the sets. I would suggest that once you print the sets, that you keep them for a while because it just depends on like what your paper allotment is at your school. If you color code them, that's even better. You can color code them by unit. If you have a laminator at your school, then you can laminate them and store them for future use. But they print out as PDFs and they print out something like this. So if you look at the screen, it's paper. You can print them out front and back or on 2 separate sheets. So I'll show you how to get to that as well. And they come in 2 different sizes. So I'll show you. So if I go to my set here and I click on these 3 little dots, then I can click on print. Okay. And once I'm on print, I found that the best way to print them depends on how big you want your manipulatives to be. So there's the small and then there's the large. Those are the best ways to print. The small is about half the size of the large. So I'll show you some samples here. I don't know if you can see it. Oops, all I see is Chad. 1 second. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So this is the large print, and then this is the small print. So it's about half the size, just like that. So it just depends how you want to print them, and then if you want them back and forth or on double-sided or single-sided. So if you go to small or large, and then you can print the images or not print the images. So for example, like some of my cards have images and some of them don't. So I would normally go without images unless they all have images and they can sort by image as well. And then you click on open PDF. And this is how they would come out. So then you can print out the sets in different, either small or large. So this is a large. So it's just double the size. So it just depends on how big you want the manipulatives to be. All right. Another cool thing you can do is that you can create sets by importing data or importing information. So one of the things that I've done before is gather information from my students. So use the Google form as a data collection that you can later import into Quizlet. And so you have to create a form first. It depends on what kind of question you want. And so for like a community builder, like your first week of school, this one would be great. So if you ask them maybe like what their first and last name is, and then just a unique fact about themselves. So let me pull up the form so you can see that end of it. One second. All right. So the form can look like something like this. Normally, I always give a basic Google form that my kids fill out with like their basic information, like who do you live with, things like that. Um, but it can be this simple. So you can have them fill in their first and last name. I would suggest that you keep it all in one line, and I'll show you why in Quizlet because that makes the import easier. So keep it all in one line. Don't make it two separate questions. And then something as simple as one unique fact about yourself, and then you can sort. So I already submitted my response, so I would go here to responses. And so now my name is here, and then I have a unique fact about myself. Once you have all your students' information for your class, then you go to these three dots, and then you would download your responses as a .csv file, which is basically like a spreadsheet almost. So I would download that. And then I could go back to Quizlet. So I have this information now that I can open. And it'll look like this. And all I have to do is highlight all the information that the students have submitted. So their name and anything that's under the question column. So these two items here. So I will copy that. And then I would go to create a new set. And so I would put community builder. Let's say this is for period 1, right? And I would go to import right underneath. It's not a big button, so it's kind of hard to see sometimes, but it's this one right here that says import from Word, Excel, Google Doc, etc. So I'm going to click that. And all I have to do now is paste it here since I already copied it. So I paste it and see how it says copy and paste your data here from Word or Google Doc. And then it says between terms and definition, tab, comma, etc. So you just press tab because there's already a tab here when you pasted it. And then I'll give you a preview. So this is the front of the card and this is the back of the card. And so then I can press import. And now it has my card made with the student's name and the interesting fact that they submitted about themselves. Now, here's one of the cool parts about this as well, is that now if you don't know how to pronounce a student's name, then you can check with the student. So you can add a voice recording here to help you remember a student's name. So for example, my name is Susie Gomez. So I can press the space bar and record. Susie Gomez. Susie Gomez. And you can trash it or you can re-record it or play it. This is particularly important for kids that maybe you really want to remember how to pronounce their name because it's not phonetically something that you know how to pronounce. So that's really helpful as well. So you have that option there. You can add images, but I'm going to show you a different way to tag a student that's a lot easier than adding one image at a time. So you can have a whole set for every student in your class based on the information from the Google form that's imported into a set. So then you can create it. I'm not sure, it's English and Spanish, so I'm going to put English for now. So this one only has one name, but normally you can create it because you need at least 5 cards to create a set. So I'll show you one that's already made. So for example, right, so once you have all the students' names and then their like unique information, then you can play like Quizlet Live and do everything with the names after your first week with them getting to know the kids. So that's one of the ways that you can merge your information from a Google form to um, a Quizlet set, which brings me to the next part. So once you have that set done, you can also attach it to a diagram, attach your cards to a diagram. So one thing you could do is you could take a class picture. So for example, I have 6 classes, so I would take 6 pictures total, one picture per period, to help me learn students' names. And I normally do this right outside my class. You can also do it for like a campus tour. Take pictures of things that are on your school and then save them as a Quizlet set so that kids can know what each part of the school is known for or is important for. Especially for me, for middle school is important because they come from elementary school to middle school. So it's a really great way to help them get familiar with the campus. It's also great to send out to parents as a classroom tour or a school tour. And it's just for essentials for students. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So first I took the class picture. And it'll look something like this. All these kids have a waiver, so no worries. I'll click the edit button so you can see it. Okay, so first you upload the picture. And let me show you with the blank text so that you can see what that looks like. So see, when you start a new set, it says add and label a diagram. So I would choose an image. And then press open. And then it'll look like this. Now here I have a couple of options. I can use the little hand to like pan the image, and I can use the dot to add a point, the square to add a rectangle, and then I can either add a new term or add it to one that's already here. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. Or I can add a shape. I like the point because it's easier. It's like click and go. So I can click kid, and then let's say this is Daniel, right? And so forth. So I can just go down the line like that. And so that's how you get the diagram I just showed you. So let's go back to the one that's already done. All right, so let's say that this is, all right, so I can add a point, right? Or I can add a rectangle. So here I have a rectangle if I wanted a rectangle or a point. And then for each dot I have on my picture, that will attach it to a number. So that when I review my set, it'll tell me exactly where in the picture that is. So let's look what this looks like when I press like learn. Okay, so when I press learn and I click the student, I can see it says the student's name. So I have to click on which student it is. So this is Itali. And now it's testing me, so Lakshmi. Oops, I forgot this. So you can do it like that. You can also edit where maybe you don't have to write them, just do multiple choice. Okay, so then I can just click and it helps you review and just kind of test if you know the kids' names. So it can be great for like a class to learn each other's names, or even for the teacher to learn the students' names. So that's really great as well. It works with Match as well, and to just drag it to the student. So you can turn it into a game basically. So it's just a really great way for you to learn your students' names. If you imported their unique information as well, then you'll have the kid's name, you'll have their tag in the picture, and then you'll also have their unique fact about themselves. So you'll have a little bit more information, and it's fun to just kind of play that with your students. Um, and I think that's all I had for you guys today. So I'll be more than happy to look through the questions now. I normally post different tech stuff that I go through on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is at Engaged in the Middle, so you can always find me there. And I'll go ahead and look through the Q&A.
Yeah, Susie,